Now let's go to another sutta. Kutadanta Sutta. It's about sacrifice. Sutta number 5, Dika Nikaya. Thus have I heard. Once the Lord was travelling through Magadha with a large company of some 500 monks, and he arrived at a Brahmin village called Kanumata, and there he stayed at the Ambalatika park. Now at that time the Brahmin Kutadanta was living at Kanumata, a populous place full of grass, timber, water and corn, which had been given to him by King Senior Bimbisara of Magadha as a royal gift and with royal powers. And Kutadanta planned a great sacrifice, 700 bulls, 700 bullocks, 700 heifers, 700 he-goats, and 700 rams were all tied up to the sacrificial post. Stop here for a moment. He wants to get married, so he thought, he make a great sacrifice to heaven. Sacrifice all these animals, kill them and offer to heaven, and then he will get a lot of blessings of merit. And this also happens with our Chinese, and those who follow the Taoists, they also like to kill animals and offer. Even up to today, Indians, they also kill animals and offer the blood and all that. And the Brahmins and householders of Kanumata heard say, the ascetic Gotama is staying at Ambalatika, and concerning that blessed Lord, a good report has been spread about. This blessed Lord is an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, perfected in knowledge and conduct, well-farer, knower of the worlds, unequal trainer of men to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, a Buddha, a blessed Lord. He proclaims this world with its gods, Maras and Brahmas, the world of ascetics and Brahmins with its princes and people, having come to know it by his own knowledge. He teaches a Dhamma that is lovely in its beginning, lovely in its middle, and lovely in its ending, in the spirit and in the letter. And he displays the fully perfected, thoroughly purified holy life. And indeed, it is good to see such Arahants. And at that, the Brahmins and householders, leaving Kanumata in great numbers, went to Ambalatika. Just then, Kutadanta had gone up to his veranda for his midday rest. Seeing all the Brahmins and householders making for Ambalatika, he asked his steward the reason. The steward replied, Sir, it is the ascetic Gotama, concerning whom a good report has been spread about. This blessed Lord is an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, etc. That is why they are going to see him. Then Kutadanta thought, I have heard that the ascetic Gotama understands how to conduct successfully the triple sacrifice with its 16 requisites. Now I do not understand all this, but I want to make a big sacrifice. Suppose I were to go to the ascetic Gotama and ask him about the matter. So he sent his steward to the Brahmins and householders of Kanumata to ask them to wait for him. And at that time, several hundred Brahmins were staying at Kanumata, intending to take part in Kutadanta's sacrifice. Hearing of his intention to visit the ascetic Gotama, they went and asked him if this were true. So it is, gentlemen, I am going to visit the ascetic Gotama. And they said, Sir, do not visit the ascetic Gotama. And this is exactly as the previous sutta, where they try to discourage him from visiting the Buddha. Then Kutadanta said to the Brahmins, Now listen, gentlemen, as to why it is fitting for us to visit the Reverend Gotama, and why it is not fitting for him to visit us. And here follows also exactly what we heard in the previous sutta. He gives all the reasons why he should go to the Buddha and not the Buddha come to him. On hearing this, the Brahmin said, Sir, since you praise the ascetic Gotama so much, then even if he were to live 100 yojanas from here, it would be fitting for a believing clansman to go with a shoulder bag to visit him. And sir, we shall all go to visit the ascetic Gotama. And so Kutadanta went with a large company of Brahmins to Ambalatika. He approached the Lord, exchanged courtesies with him, and sat down to one side. Some of the Brahmins and householders of Kanumata made obeisance to the Lord. Some exchanged courtesies with him. Some saluted him with joined palms. Some announced their name and clan. And some sat down to one side in silence. Sitting to one side, Kutadanta addressed the Lord. Reverend Gotama, I have heard that you understand how to conduct successfully the triple sacrifice with its 16 requisites. Now I do not understand all this, but I want to make a big sacrifice. It would be well if the ascetic Gautama were to explain this to me. And the Buddha said, then listen, Brahmin, pay proper attention and I will explain. Yes, sir, said Kutadanta. And the Lord said, Brahmin, once upon a time there was a king called Mahavijita. He was rich, of great wealth and resources, with an abundance of gold and silver, with possessions and requisites, of money and money's worth, with a full treasury and granary. And when King Mahavijita was musing in private, the thought came to him, I have acquired extensive wealth in human terms. I occupy a wide extent of land which I have conquered. Suppose now I were to make a great sacrifice, which would be to my benefit and happiness for a long time. And calling his minister chaplain, he told his thought, I want to make a big sacrifice. Instruct me, Reverend Sir, how this may be to my lasting benefit and happiness. This minister chaplain here refers to the Brahmin advisor. These kings, they like to have a Brahmin advisor because these Brahmins, they know very powerful mantras. So here is called the chaplain. The chaplain replied, Your Majesty's country is beset by thieves. It is ravaged. Villages and towns are being destroyed. The countryside is infested with brigands. If Your Majesty were to tax this region, that would be the wrong thing to do. Suppose Your Majesty were to think, I will get rid of this plague of robbers by executions and imprisonment, or by confiscation, threats and banishment. The plague would not be properly ended. Those who survived would later harm Your Majesty's realm. However, with this plan you can completely eliminate the plague. To those in the kingdom who are engaged in cultivating crops and raising cattle, let Your Majesty distribute grain and fodder. To those in trade, give capital. To those in government service, assign proper living wages. Then those people, being intent on their own occupations, will not harm the kingdom. Your Majesty's revenues will be great. The land will be tranquil and not beset by thieves. And the people with joy in their hearts will play with their children and will dwell in open houses. And saying, so be it, the king accepted the chaplain's advice. He gave grain and fodder, capital to those in trade, proper living wages, and the people with joy in their hearts dwelt in open houses. Stop here for a moment. So here, what is advised to the king is actually very good principles for a government, how a government should govern the people. Those who are farmers, give them grain to plant and fodder to feed their cattle. And those who are doing business, give them money. Those who are working for the government, give them proper wages, etc. Then King Mahavijita sent for the chaplain and said, I have got rid of the plague of robbers. Following your plan, my revenue has grown. The land is tranquil and not beset by thieves. And the people with joy in their hearts play with their children and dwell in open houses. Now I wish to make a great sacrifice. Instruct me as to how this may be done to my lasting benefit and happiness. For this, sire, you should send for your Khattiyas from town and country, your advisers and counselors, the most influential Brahmins and the wealthy householders of your realm, and say to them, I wish to make a great sacrifice. Assist me in this, gentlemen, that it may be to my lasting benefit and happiness. The king agreed and did so. Sire, let the sacrifice begin. Now is the time, Your Majesty. These 4 assenting groups will be the accessories for the sacrifice. Let's stop here for a moment. These 4 assenting groups must be these 4 types of people. The Khattiyas, the Brahmins, the wealthy householders, and the ordinary folk, I guess. And the Buddha said, King Mahavijita is endowed with 8 things. He is well born on both sides, number 1. Number 2, he is handsome, of no mean appearance. Number 3, he is rich with a full treasury and granary. Number 4, he is powerful, having a 4-branch army that is loyal, dependable, making bright his reputation among his enemies. Number 5, he is a faithful giver and host, not shutting his door against ascetics, Brahmins and wayfarers, beggars and the needy, a fountain of goodness. Number 6, he is very learned in what should be learned. Number 7, he knows the meaning of whatever is said, saying, this is what that means. Number 8, he is a scholar, accomplished, wise, competent to perceive advantage in the past, the future, or the present. King Mahavijita is endowed with these 8 things. These constitute the accessories for the sacrifice. The Brahmin chaplain is endowed with 4 things. 1, he is well born. Number 2, he is a scholar, versed in the mantras. Number 3, he is virtuous, of increasing virtue, endowed with increasing virtue. Number 4, he is learned, accomplished and wise, and is the first or second to hold the sacrificial ladle. He has these 4 qualities. These constitute the accessories to the sacrifice. Then prior to the sacrifice, the Brahmin chaplain taught the king the 3 modes. It might be, Your Majesty, might have some regrets about the intended sacrifice. 1, I am going to lose a lot of wealth. Or 2, during the sacrifice, I am losing a lot of wealth. Or 3, after the sacrifice, thinking I have lost a lot of wealth. In such cases, Your Majesty should not entertain such regrets. Then prior to the sacrifice, the chaplain dispelled the king's qualms with 10 conditions for the recipient. Sire, there will come to the sacrifice those who take life and those who abstain from taking life. To those who take life, so will it be to them. But those who abstain from taking life will have a successful sacrifice and will rejoice in it, and their hearts may be calm within. There will be those who take what is not given, and those who refrain, those who indulge in sexual misconduct, and those who refrain, those who tell lies, and those who do not, those who indulge in calumny, harsh and frivolous speech, and those who do not, those who are covetous, and those who are not, those who harbor ill will, and those who do not, those who have wrong views, and those who have right views. To those who have wrong views, it will turn out accordingly, but those who have right views will have a successful sacrifice and will rejoice in it, and their hearts may be calm within. So the chaplain dispelled the king's doubts with 10 conditions. These 10 conditions are stop here. These 10 conditions refers to the 10 good karmas, the 3 body karmas, to abstain from killing, from taking what is not given, and adultery, or sexual misconduct. And then the 4 speech is those who don't tell lies, who don't. The second is those here it says calumny or slander. Actually, it means not to carry tales, not to carry tales, cause disharmony. Number 3 is harsh speech, not to engage in harsh speech. Number 4, not to engage in frivolous speech. And then 3 more are mental good karmas, not covetous, and do not have ill will, and thirdly, to have right view. To have right view. Right view means believing in karma, believing there are realms of rebirth, and that there are holy men. So these are the 10 conditions. So the chaplain instructed the king, who was making the great sacrifice with 16 reasons, urged him, inspired him, and gladdened his heart. Someone might say, King Mahavijita is making a great sacrifice, but he has not invited his Katyas, his advisors and counselors, the most influential Brahmins and wealthy householders. So these 4, earlier we talked about the 4, the 4 assenting groups. These are the 4 assenting groups here. One is the warriors, the Katyas. Secondly, advisors and counselors. 3 influential Brahmins, and 4 householders, wealthy householders. So there are 4 things here. But such words would not be in accordance with the truth, since the king has invited them. Thus the king may know that he will have a successful sacrifice and rejoice in it, and his heart will be calm within. Or someone might say, King Mahavijita is making a great sacrifice, but he's not well born on both sides, etc. So these are the 8 things that we went through just now. One is well born on both sides for 7 generations. Number 2, handsome. Number 3, rich. And number 4, powerful with a big army. Number 5, a faithful giver and host. Number 6, very learned. Number 7, knows the meaning of what is said. Number 8, a scholar. Competent to perceive advantage in the past, future or present. These are the 8 things. Or someone might say his chaplain is not well born, etc. So these are the 4 things about the chaplain. The chaplain is endowed with 4 things. He is well born, he is a scholar. Number 3, he is virtuous. Number 4, he is learned. Thus the chaplain instructed the king with 16 reasons. These are the 16 reasons. 4 is the 4 types of people to invite. 8 is the 8 conditions that the king is endowed with. And the last 4 is the 4 things the chaplain is endowed with. In this sacrifice, Brahmin, no bulls were slain, no goats or sheep, no cocks or pigs, nor were various living beings subjected to slaughter, nor were trees cut down for sacrificial posts, nor were grasses mown for the sacrificial grass. And those who are called slaves or servants or workmen did not perform their tasks for fear of blows or threats, weeping and in tears. But those who wanted to do something did it. Those who did not wish to do did not. They did what they wanted to do and not what they did not want to do. The sacrifice was carried out with ghee, oil, butter, curds, honey and molasses. Let's stop here for a moment. So here in this sacrifice, which was advised by the great chaplain, there was no slaughter of animals. People were not forced to do. And basically the things that they offered were these things that were considered good, valuable things during the time. Ghee, oil, butter, curds, honey and molasses. These are also considered medicinal foods in the monks' Vinaya. Then Brahmin, the Khatyas, the ministers and councillors, the influential Brahmins, the wealthy householders of town and country, having received a sufficient income, came to King Mahavijita and said, "We have brought sufficient wealth, Your Majesty. Please accept it." And the king said, "But gentlemen, I have collected together sufficient wealth. Whatever is left over, you take away." At the king's refusal, they went away to one side and consulted together. "It is not right for us to take this wealth back to our own homes. The king is making a great sacrifice. Let us follow his example." Then the Khatyas put their gifts to the east of the sacrificial pit. The advisers and councillors set theirs to the south, the Brahmins to the west, and the wealthy householders to the north. And in this sacrifice no bulls were slain, nor were living beings subjected to slaughter. Those who wanted to do something did it. Those who did not wish to did not. The sacrifice was carried out with ghee, oil, butter, curds, honey and molasses. Thus there were the 4 assenting groups, and King Mahavijita was endowed with 8 things, and the chaplain with 4 things in 3 modes. This Brahmin is called the 16th successful sacrifice in 3 modes. Stop here for a moment. So you see, even the Brahmins themselves don't know this tradition that was handed down from Brahmins, but the Buddha can describe so well. By the way, if next time your parents or your relatives want to pray to heaven, ask them to offer ghee, oil, butter, curds, honey and molasses. At this the Brahmins shouted loudly and noisily, "What a splendid sacrifice! What a splendid way to perform a sacrifice!" But Kutadanta sat in silence. And the Brahmins asked him why he did not applaud the ascetic Gotama's fine words. He replied, "It is not that I do not applaud them. My head would split open if I did not. But it strikes me that the ascetic Gotama does not say, 'I have heard this,' or it must have been like this. But he says it was like this or like that at the time. And so, gentlemen, it seems to me that the ascetic Gotama must have been at that time either King Mahavijita, the lord of the sacrifice, or else the Brahmin chaplain who conducted the sacrifice for him. Does the Reverend Gautama acknowledge that he performed or caused to be performed such a sacrifice, and that in consequence at death, after the breaking up of the body, he was reborn in a good sphere, a heavenly state? And the Buddha said, I do, Brahmin. I was the Brahmin chaplain who conducted that sacrifice. Stop here for a moment. So you see, the Kutadanta is suspected that the Buddha must have been either the king or the chaplain at that time, and the Buddha admitted. And Reverend Gautama, is there any other sacrifice that is simpler, less difficult, more fruitful and profitable than this threefold sacrifice with its 16 attributes? And the Buddha said, there is, Brahmin. So here you see this Kutadanta, when he heard about this sacrifice, it seems to him very complicated. So many things, so many conditions must fulfill. 4 and 8 and 4 and 3 more, some more. So he says, is there another way, more simple and yet more fruitful? And he asked, what is it, Reverend Gautama? And the Buddha said, wherever regular family gifts are given to virtuous ascetics, these constitute a sacrifice more fruitful and profitable than that. Why, Reverend Gautama, and for what reason is this better? And the Buddha said, Brahmin, no arahants or those who have attained the arahant path will attend such a sacrifice. Why? Because there they see beatings and throttlings, so they do not attend. But they will attend a sacrifice at which regular family gifts are given to virtuous ascetics, because there are no beatings or throttlings. That is why this kind of sacrifice is more fruitful and profitable. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is saying, instead of praying to heaven, you will get more blessings or merit if you give regularly to those monks or ascetics who pass by the house, who come and beg for their food. You give to them regularly. That is very meritorious. That's why you see in Buddhist countries like Thailand, they have such a tradition that when we go on alms round Pindabat, as soon as the sun breaks, the monks go around begging for their food. And you see these old ladies sitting outside their house waiting, even before the sunlight comes up. They have a small table, they put their rice and their food, which they pack into small plastic containers, are all wrapped up. And sometimes even flowers and candles. So when the monk comes, they will scoop 1 or 2 ladles of rice, and then each monk they'll give one offering, 1 packet of food, and sometimes a flower to bring back to put on the altar. So it's a very good practice. If they do this long term, it's very meritorious. After all, when they do the sacrifice, they offer all this food to the devas. The devas don't eat, but the monks eat. At least they benefit. But Reverend Gautama, is there any other sacrifice that is more profitable than either of these? And the Buddha said, there is, Brahmin. What is it, Reverend Gautama? Brahmin, if anyone provides shelter for the Sangha coming from the 4 quarters, that constitutes a more profitable sacrifice. Stop here for a moment. So here, higher than the merit of giving food to the monks is to provide shelter, that means living quarters. In other words, like building a monastery. Of all the material offerings, building, giving land, or in some way providing shelter, that means living quarters, especially a monastery for monks coming from the 4 directions, north, south, east, west. That means long term. And if you build, for example, a monastery, if the monastery lasts for 500 years, then during that period of 500 years, all the monks and all the people who make use of the monastery are benefited. So that's why it's very meritorious. And besides, if there is the Sangha of monks, then the Dhamma will last in the world. If there is no Sangha, then slowly the Dhamma will also disappear. And then there will not be any holy men around. But Reverend Gautama, is there any sacrifice that is more profitable than these 3? There is, Brahmin. What is it, Reverend Gautama? Brahmin, if anyone with a pure heart goes for refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, that constitutes a sacrifice more profitable than any of these. Stop here for a moment. So you see, if a person does not believe in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, they can still do dana, they can still offer land to a monastery, but the Buddha here says more meritorious than these two is believing in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. For you to believe, take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha, basically it means that you understand the Dhamma. If you don't understand some basic Dhamma, you would not take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma and Sangha. So that's why it's more meritorious. But Reverend Gautama, is there any sacrifice that is more profitable than these four? There is Brahmin. What is it, Reverend Gautama? Brahmin, if anyone with a pure heart undertakes the precepts to refrain from taking life, from taking what is not given, from sexual immorality, from lying speech, and from taking strong drink and sloth-producing drugs, that constitutes a sacrifice more profitable than any of these four. Stop here for a moment. So you can see here that keeping the precepts is more meritorious than the previous. The previous, you do good, you benefit people. But if you don't understand the Dhamma, then you might still go hunting. There's some people, they do a lot of philanthropy, good charity, a lot of charity, but still they go hunting and shoot wild boar and all that. But if you undertake the precepts, then you don't harm other living beings. That's why it's more meritorious.